Joining us right now, we have Dr. Raywat Deonandan, an epidemiologist and science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Welcome back, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Now, look, I know we heard from Dr. Vera Etches, Ottawa's chief medical officer, that we should expect some outbreaks, that we should expect some cases in schools, but we're already hearing that just after 2 days of school, 190 students are self-isolating after a possible exposure at the French Catholic School Board. 5 Ottawa French Catholic schools are warning of exposures. What are your thoughts on that?
Fast, admit. We were definitely expecting some, and I expected some quickly, not this fast though, but this is the reality we live in. Now, it's important to note that just because cases rise, it doesn't mean there's an outbreak in those schools. An outbreak is defined when a couple of cases are epidemiologically linked, meaning that one gave it to somebody else. Could be that these cases came in independently from the community, which is a little alarming. So brace yourselves. This is our new normal for the next little while.
What do you think of the province's announcement there that it is pausing things for 4 weeks?
I think we should shut down as many things as we can, keeping the economy open, but closing the non-essential services. This is a all-hands-on-deck scenario, and I think people are slowly starting to get a grip on that if we're going to keep schools open, everyone has to do their part, meaning, not going to bars and things like that. And it's so important to keep schools open because if schools are open, then businesses stay open, then parents can go to work, and then the economy stays open, and we all get to have a life. So everyone has to do their part.
And yet they're not saying that. Today they were saying, if you're concerned about Toronto, if you're concerned about Peel, if you're concerned about Ottawa, are you going to roll things back there? And they hesitated and they said, no more parties. Please, people, stop having huge parties. But the Premier and the Health Minister did not go to that length of saying, if this continues to happen, we will roll things back.
They probably do have that plan in their back pocket, and they're afraid to say it outright lest they cause some panic.
Should they say it outright? What do you think?
I don't know. That's a commentary issue. I think they should, actually, because we're at the stage now that the people who are going to get the message have gotten the message. What's left now is for that intractable set of individuals who only respond to threat, unfortunately. And the kind of threat they will respond is, I will take your toys away if you don't play nicely. So that's what has to happen. The toys have to be reached for with some intent.
Should we be pressing the pause button on the kids going back to school if we're worried about the numbers and the community spread?
If we're at the point where the community transmission levels are above a certain threshold, we have to be ready to put a pause on that. We have to be ready to rush back inside at the school level and at the community level when things get bad. I don't think we're there yet. Now, there are some metrics that the experts have decided upon. Harvard published a couple of them. One of them is if your incidence rate is 25 cases per 100,000 population or lower, you're probably okay. We are well below that across the country. So we're not at any sort of panic threshold yet. But we have to monitor these things very closely. It is all driven by what happens in the community, not so much in the schools, but in the community.
Mm-hmm. What did you think when you saw there are 185 new cases of COVID in Ontario today?
I was not surprised. I was disappointed. And it's going to go up a little bit more, I think, because the long weekend, people were socializing, and those numbers have not made it into the data stream yet. So the next week or 10 days, expect it to go up a little bit. It would be nice if it wasn't that high, but what we have to look for is the trend, the slope of that curve. Mm-hmm. If it stays more or less flat, we're okay. If it starts climbing rapidly, then we may have to consider some new policies. But we're at a dangerous time. So schools are opening, the weather's getting bad, people are going inside, and the bars are open. So these are all a variety of factors that are driving this trend towards maybe a resurgence of cases. So we have to be extra careful right now, especially as cold and flu season is upon us.
Dr. David Williams and the Premier were asked point blank, well, if the numbers were similar back in March when we shut schools down and the numbers are climbing back up there again, we have 185 new cases today, why are we reopening schools? And Dr. Williams reasoned and said kind of what you're saying. The decision to shut down schools in March was based on the positivity rate and how widespread COVID-19 was at the time. And he said now we're at a different part of the epic curve. But if the baseline increases, then we might have to move back. Worst case scenario, would we have to shut down everything again, or would we just scale back things like indoor dining?
That is indeed the worst case scenario, shut down everything again. And some countries, like European countries, are considering it. Now, I don't think we'll get there because I'm a stupid optimist and I have faith in people to do the right thing eventually. And also, what we didn't have back in March was a thorough deployment of strategies and tools. We have that now. We have the mandatory mask wearing. We have the distancing. We have ventilation plans. We have employers with spacing plans in the businesses. All these things are going to help enormously if we follow them diligently. So I have some, ridiculously naive faith that people are going to do the right thing and that these measures will cause the transmission rates to keep below a certain threshold that will prevent us from complete lockdown, but will likely not prevent us from having to slow down other aspects of the economy.
I guess for people who are not epidemiologists or experts, they're looking at the numbers and going, gosh, but school just went back. If the numbers are already going up and the weather is still pretty good and the kids are just going back to school now, then what's around the corner? You can kind of understand why people are feeling that way.
Of course they are, and I share their concerns. Now, the numbers in schools, that represents what happened a couple of weeks ago. That's not stuff that happened yesterday. That's the way this disease works. There's a lag all the time. So the goal here, again, is to drive the community numbers as low as possible so that it doesn't get into the schools. And once it gets into the schools, to prevent it from spreading in the schools. And once it's spreading in the schools, to prevent it from getting back into the community. So we have, layered strategies and tools to prevent things from happening at every level. But it starts with just keeping it out of the community. So even if you haven't got kids, wear a mask and don't go to parties because you've got a part to play in all of this.
All right, Dr. Raywat Deonandan, we appreciate you so much coming back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.